dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will they be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day, even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream. My poor little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today.
It's May 31st, and welcome to a special edition of tonight's Ken and Glenn Show with a guy named Scott. We have two special guests, Nikki Dixon and Darion Brown. It's time once again for the Ken and Glenn Show with a guy named Scott. So let's bring them on. Here they are, the stars of our show. It's Ken and Glenn. Oh, yeah, and a guy named Scott.
And a guy named Scott.
With a guy named Scott.
A guy named Scott, yes.
We're going to get that down one of these days.
Yes, sorry. No, wait.
Happy Sunday, gentlemen. Been a somber week.
Happy Sunday.
Good to see you guys.
What a crazy week we've had, huh?
You were just on the horn in Australia?
Yeah, my biggest client currently is Volkswagen Group Australia, which is Volkswagen, Audi, Porsche, Bentley, Lamborghini. They don't let me near any of those latter ones. But it's Monday morning over there.
Take the bug out for a spin anytime, right?
Oh, Bugatti is the other one. Yeah. So I tried to work out a trade, but they weren't real interested in that. But they're great folks, and they're my biggest client right now. But it's Monday mornings over there. So. Yeah, 10 o'clock Monday morning. So working with them. Good to see you guys.
Good to see you guys.
You guys almost didn't get to see me this week. So I am a puddle of gratitude because I was driving about 75 miles per hour on the freeway 2 nights ago when all of a sudden a large object appeared right in front of me late at night. No way to avoid it. Wow. And I hit it full force, and the front end of my car it was not small enough to pass under the car, so the front end of my car suffered, and I did not.
Oh my goodness.
And I'm just grateful that metal can be replaced. And I have spent years, as Carolyn can attest, moving things off of the freeway for people for this reason. And it's no exaggeration. I've moved hundreds of things off of the freeway when I saw them, passed by, near miss, pulled over, waited, never anything that would have endangered my life, always being very, very careful to wait until I've got a country mile to slip in and move it. But anyway, I'm grateful to be here because what a lot of people don't stop and realize is the swerving itself can cause a car to flip. And here's the worst case scenario. I'm so glad that object was hit by me in a car and not by a motorcycle.
Oh, gosh.
Oh, wow. What was it?
It's a game over situation if it's a motorcycle. I don't know. I knocked it way off into the side, and you know, and then limped home on a car that was smoking and every light underneath. And so I've got some damage, but Daddy's okay.
Yeah.
And that's really all that matters.
Thank God.
Yeah, it's all that matters. So we've had a lot of unrest in our world, and we decided tonight it's kind of a blessing that we didn't have a guest planned in advance. If we had, we would have invited them into a discussion along these lines based on the events of the last several days. And but it worked out conveniently that it was just the three of us scheduled, and then we're able to be flexible and adjust the show around current events. And we will always operate that way with this show. For our listeners, please know that. And guys, what are your thoughts about the events of the week? And then we're going to introduce our guests.
First off, I just want to say hello because the client I was talking about just popped on and said hi. So Jason Bradshaw is watching us in Sydney. He is the Chief Customer and Marketing Officer of Volkswagen Australia. So,
well, hello, Jason.
Hey, Jason.
That's who I was on the phone with. So
good to have you here.
Glad he's here from watching in Sydney this morning,
awesome.
Monday morning.
Wow,
that is awesome.
But here in the States, it is a very somber time, isn't it, Glenn? It's Ken. We were talking earlier this week on my live stream that, gee, I wonder what's going to take the COVID-19 virus off the front page, and we certainly know. It's just for those of us that remember the late 60s, early 70s, you just have to even say history repeats itself in a way, don't you? I mean, it's just tragic and jaw-dropping.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. I remember. Go ahead, Ken.
No, I don't remember the late 60s and 70s. So
well, that's because your folks hadn't shaken their groove thing yet and created you.
No, I was born in 68. I don't, you know.
Well, 68, you know, a lot happened in 68. April of 68 is when Dr. King was gunned down by James Earl Ray. I remember that. It was on a balcony in Memphis, Tennessee, and I was 9 years old. And my grandfather came in and said some racist remarks that are too uncomfortable for me to even repeat. And so I was raised in the epicenter of racism. And because of it, I think that's why it didn't stay with me, because I remembered smelling the ugly aroma of it. And just thought, you know, to myself, and I was compassionate even in those years, I thought nobody would deserve being on the receiving end of that. Nobody. And I'm grateful that I was able to be the generation that broke that cycle in my own family. But that was a rough year, Ken, because that was also the year that Bobby Kennedy was killed. 68 was a big year. And that speech that we just showed, for those of our listeners, that speech was in August of 1963, also a big year because that's the year Kennedy, several months later, was killed in Dallas. But that speech was delivered, for those of you who don't know about the I Have a Dream speech, it was not only in Washington, D.C., but it was on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial. So if you've ever been to Washington, D.C., and you've walked up those steps to the statue of Abraham Lincoln, you can know that if you're in the center of those steps, that you're actually crossing the step where Dr. King stood and made that speech. It's very, very touching. And
one of the things that breaks my heart with what's going on right now is my old home of Indianapolis, where there have been lives lost on the street from shooting and incredible looting. And one of the memories of my childhood was, you know, in my little rural community in Indiana, watching television laying on the floor when Martin Luther King had been assassinated. And Bobby Kennedy was in Indianapolis then.
Oh, wow.
And as soon as he heard about it, he went to a particular section of town that was, Indiana Avenue is a very heavily minority population, and stood on a car and with a bullhorn told the crowd that had assembled there that Martin Luther King had been shot. and you hear this incredible gasp. And he said, I am asked, basically to paraphrase, I'm asking you to please pray and to please protest, but to not be violent. For he said, for you see, I know something about having someone you love being gunned down. And I'm asking you, and Indianapolis was one of the few metropolitan areas that did not have trouble. And it was simply because Bobby Kennedy went and talked about love and talked about, how love has to conquer this. And it makes me wish we had someone like him who could stand in front of a crowd in our various cities and talk about those kinds of things. It's
the problem. I think may I? The biggest challenge, there are in these riots, and my God, social media is filled with a bunch of morons that are just spilling craziness. I mean, absolute craziness. It's not an all black riot situation. And I've seen people on social media say, like, no, actually, there's these dumbass white people starting some of these too. And it's literally out of control. And like, I don't have a solution, because standing on a car in the middle of these riots with a bullhorn might get you killed instantly in some of these riots. So it's got to stop, man. The madness has got to stop.
Well, and this is why we're doing this show tonight, because we want to do our part in giving the audience a chance to interact with our guests and air your thoughts out. I do want to make we don't usually issue rules, but we're going to issue some simple or a simple rule, which is that tonight is not going to be a political discussion. So we're not siding one way or the other with anybody. We're not trying to accuse anybody singularly of being at the helm here. And so please know that Ken will be looking at all comments, but if there's any ugliness, and that's really, we don't attract that element. We don't attract ugly viewers. We never have. There's no reason to think that would start tonight, but I'm letting you know in advance, if there are any comments, they will not, if they are ugly in theme, they will not be illuminated by Ken on the big screen. So please know that, and try to keep your comments tasteful and heart-centric. And other than that, please speak your mind tonight, because that's what this is for. Gentlemen, with your blessing, may I go ahead and introduce our two guests, because I have a personal relationship with both of them. My dear friends, Nikki and DB, both. Darian, but we call him DB at the workshop. Nikki has been with me at the studio since I opened it. She's one of the teachers there at the studio as well. Someone whose opinion I revere and always have, whose talents I also revere. She's had many roles in film and television over the years as an extremely talented woman. Had a running role on the series Queen of the South for a period of time. And the truth is, she's one of those people that does not need my precious training. She treats coming to the workshop as a trip to the gymnasium once a week. And it's for her, it's more of a discipline than anything. And she also enjoys the company of her classmates. And we are indeed a family. We are a family, a multilingual, multicultural, multicolored family. We come in all shapes and sizes. And Nikki is one of those people who is quite outspoken, and I really get her and I value her. So I invited her to come on. DB is someone who has been in my life a shorter period of time, just for the last year, and yet you would never know it, because he and I, although we are like father and son, we don't visually look like father and son, but we very much are that, and we're many, many years apart in age. And I'm hoping that he won't get off the show tonight without doing a little Denzel impression, because
I know we ain't
a special thing that he does. And,
he does it well.
And having worked with Denzel, I was able to tell him that one of my students really enjoys doing impressions of him, but he's also someone who resides in his heart. Yeah. And both are people that I'm really overjoyed and blessed to know. So with that in mind, if we could bring on both DB and Nikki at this time. Thanks, guys. Glad you're here.
Thanks.
Thanks so much for having us. We appreciate that.
You betcha. Talk to us about what you're feeling, about what you're seeing, and feel free to not edit yourself, because I want to know, you know, as much as we say we sympathize or we empathize or we understand, the truth is we can only to a limit. And I recognize that. We recognize that. And I've never known what some of the challenges you've dealt with have felt like in my own life. And I just wanted to know what you're feeling tonight. So thanks for being here, both of you.
Thank you for having me. Hey, Nick, you want to go first? Ladies first.
Oh, thank you so much. Look at you being the gentleman that you are. Well, back in the green room, Glenn, you said something about how you were 9 years old whenever Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated.
Yes.
And something that's resonated with me for a while now is that, you know, you hear people often saying, I can't believe in 2020 we would still be here. This would still be an issue. We would still have racism. Well, you were only 9 years old. So you were in the midst of that. And
Right.
You weren't the only one. So anyone who is of the age of 60 and plus, you know, they could still have those views. You, on the other hand, you've said you felt the ugliness of it, the weight of it. And so you therefore were the first in your family to break away from that.
I was.
So with that being said, what if everybody's not like you? That's why it still exists.
Mhm.
And I think that there has to be some form of conversation with one another and with your peers that say that this is ugly, this isn't right. And I think that's how the conversation starts. It can't come from an African American person, a Black person. It can't, because oftentimes it seems like we're playing the victim. And I've heard that a lot. So it has to come from someone that looks like them, in my opinion.
Are there opinions in any way, in your view, are those opinions, is there a chance that they could not be valued? I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm throwing out a thought.
Absolutely.
That, for example, if someone like myself started shooting off his mouth about it, even respectfully, which is the only way I would talk about anything that was tender, but it seems like there would be a whole sector that might have the opinion, what do you know, white boy? I mean, I'm really going to just say it the way it is, because I can hear that.
Yes.
I can hear that phrase of, what do you know? What you don't know any, you have no business talking about this. You don't know, keep your mouth shut. And that I think that would be a concern of mine. And you're saying not. I'm saying
the conversation is with another white person.
Right. I got you.
Yeah. So no, I mean, if they say, what do you know, white boy, then their heart is it's closed off to it.
Yeah.
And it might not ever be open. But someone would be, if they already have that animosity and that hate in their heart, they would be more open to speaking to someone that looks like themselves than they would be to talk to someone else that does not look like them, because they already have that hate, that preconceived notion of who that person is and how they are. So, I mean, the discussion has to start somewhere. I mean, it has to, because it's, I worry every day. I have a husband that is 6'4". He's 250 pounds. He is George Floyd, but he is, he has he went to the University of Texas, played basketball. He has a degree, but just by looking at him, you don't know that.
Right.
So, and if you have that bias already, you don't take that into account, you know, because he looks menacing. And And I just think that there has to, and let me ask you, and I mean, you told me to be open.
Yes, and I meant it.
Okay. Let me ask you three gentlemen. Do you feel fearful when you see a Black man? A large Black man.
Can I go first?
Sure.
I'm gonna just take a shot in the dark that I am the only white dude on this panel that's been to a house party in the projects drinking malt liquor, a malt liquor 40.
Is it because you heard they were serving?
Listen to NWA in my car at the same time I was rolling up on that. So, like for me, I have been around it a long time. I have a lot of African American friends, and so for me, no, I don't. Now, if I look, this is just being real. Just like if a Black man were walking through an all-white neighborhood at night, and a cop car rolled by, they would get nervous.
Oh,
100%. I would think close to 100%, right? If I'm walking through certain parts of certain cities at night, yeah, I'm going to be nervous. I don't even have to see somebody to be nervous. But then when I see somebody, like, so I think that it depends on the environment. It does depend on the environment. If I'm walking through the mall and I see a Black guy walking, I'll be like, yo, what's up? That's it. And so for me, I've been around it a lot. My culture was shocked a long time ago. I hadn't been around it growing up. I grew up in this very similar situation that Glenn was talking about. And I saw the ugliness of it too. And I was like, what in the world? And I've said this before on air. I never met, until I was probably 14 or 15 years old, I had never met a Black person ever in my entire life, ever, till I was 14 or 15 years old. So, when the first time I did, I was like, oh my gosh, I never met anybody. I hadn't, it was completely different for me. So, that's me personally. But today, no way.
I'd agree.
Scott, you want to go ahead?
Nikki, I'd agree. It's to a degree with what Ken said. I think it's situational. I mean, you put me in a dark alley some night, I'd be afraid whoever was walking towards me. It's in the mall. I wouldn't. I've thought a lot about this over the last couple of days, and these guys have heard me tell the story. In the community I grew up with, there were no minorities. I'm from a small farm town in Indiana. And when I was 19, I was elected a national officer of FFA, Future Farmers.
Future Farmers. Yep.
So, and I followed the first Black national FFA officer, who is to this day one of my closest friends. And he said, I'm going to do you a favor that you will never forget. You won't appreciate it now, but he said, I'm going to do you a favor that you will never forget, because the guy you follow gets to choose where you go your first week as an experience program, just to get you out of your state. And I spent a week in an all-Black high school where I was the only white. I've got as much right to talk about understanding the Black experience as I do saying I understand what it's like to give birth to a child. I mean, I have no qualification to talk about that, but I was the minority for the first time. I was the one who was different, so to speak. And I really, really think to a great degree, that's at the heart of so much of this, is that it is hard for someone who has had the benefit of being in the majority for so long that you just assume that everybody else, I mean, if I see the lights of a police car pulling me over, it never occurs to me that my life might be in danger. But yet, Fred, my friend, and I have been in a car. There was a time that there was bad weather and there was a roadblock. You know, I'm 19, 20 years old. And because my black friend was driving, they looked at us differently than they did and I'd never had that happen to me before. And I just think that so much of this is based in just this, and when people say, don't mean to go on a rant, but when people say,
please go on a rant, Scott,
when
please.
people say, I don't see color. I mean,
Oh, yeah, right. I know.
you're invisible. You know, I mean, I've had people
Hold
say,
on, I'm going to take that comment out of my script.
oh,
'Cause I was going to open with that.
it's
but-
like if I had a friend with one eye. Well, you know, I don't see eyes. Are you kidding me?
Oh, geez.
And I think that's what makes this conversation too so difficult for so many of us, is that we are so afraid of saying the wrong thing. And we're so afraid of, you know, if I'm talking to these guys privately and I say something and it doesn't come out right, I can go, wait, that didn't come out the way I meant it. You know, and you back up, but there's not assumptions about you that results from that. And I just get so frustrated at so many friends who, because they've never had the privilege that I had to be put in a situation where you're the one they have no concept of, and that's the other thing. I knew it was for a week. You know, I mean, I was in that school for a week. And you know, it just, I think our inability to talk about it, our inability to understand how, not that we'll ever know what the experience is like, but at least to have an appreciation for it, for goodness sakes. All of those things contribute to our lack of understanding.
You spoke volumes. I mean, DB, I'm gonna let you get in, but that is one of my that runs through me like no other. When someone says, I don't see color, yes, you do. Because what would happen if you had some friends coming to a restaurant that have never met me, but you needed to describe how they would know me? What would you say? You would have to, in some way, say the Black girl, and that's okay. And it's okay to see this as a difference or to differentiate, you know, me from someone else. But when it's not okay is when you make an assumption based on that fact. That's where the problem is. If you make an assumption solely because I am Black, you're an asshole.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. But just to say, oh, she's a Black girl, that there's absolutely nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
I'm with you. May I answer your question?
Yes. Oh, I forgot. Yes.
Yeah. So
We already know how you feel.
Yeah.
No, you may not. You actually know how I feel, but you don't know how I got there.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone knows how I got there. And I want to tell you, I got there two ways. I want to tell you, and I'm going to be really open about this, that what was said that day to me when I was 9 years old was, boys, in the thickest, nastiest Texas accent, boys, it's a good day. That's what was said, followed by the news.
Wow.
And that is something, Ken, you don't need to put me on solo screen for that. I've just got some thoughts I want to share. In 1965, my mother remarried and married a Jewish man. By the way, according to I won't even say which religion, but the religion my mom came from, no different. Same deal. Same exact deal. So she was bold enough to be willing to get a divorce, which was huge. And when she remarried Jewish, rest assured, there were opinions about that. And they were not subtle. They were strong, very, very strong. And so I was issued Judaism, was raised Jewish. And in 1967, so they got married in 65. And in 67, you guys remember the character of Alice on the Brady Bunch?
Yeah.
The housekeeper?
Yeah.
So we had an Alice, only our Alice was Black. And she was my role model for unconditional love. She is the reason I grew up the way I grew up because she was the most open-minded person in my upbringing. And I loved her very deeply. Her name was Louise Anderson from a little area called Atlanta, Texas. Not Atlanta, Georgia, but Atlanta, Texas, up in the northeastern corner, not too far from Texarkana. She made the best chicken fried steak on the planet. And I mean, we were tempted to put that on her headstone. She passed away. She had diabetes and wound up losing both of her legs and still came over without her legs to make us chicken fried steak years and years later.
Wow.
She let my brothers smoke weed when my parents were out of town and never once told on them. She just, she took it into her own hands to say, boys, this is not the best choice and so forth, but she never finked. And so she was like, Louise was cool. Louise was hip. She doesn't think on anybody. And the first person in Dallas to take me to see Drive-In when it opened was Louise, and we went alone. And I will never forget that, is that our housekeeper and family member, she took our family trips with us, and we went every year down to Galveston, packed up the station wagon, put the fishing rods on the top. We had one of those old wood panel, you remember the old wood panel station wagons, and Louise would be right there in the thick of it. And she went to Galveston with us for a week. She was my bud. And she was the one, because, we were in those years where there was segregation, and then all of a sudden busing started. This was in the early 70s. And by that time I had 4 or 5 years with Louise and was not blind to things at all. And so I think that the busing change really didn't affect me as dramatically as it did some of my buddies, because I was already in that open-minded. So to answer your question, Nikki, but that's who healed any chance that I would ever have racism as a part of who it is I am. You ask if I would be scared, and not to cop out, but before they ever said it, my buddies here, the same exact answer came to me, which is depends. Mm-hmm. It depends on the situation. It depends on the where. It depends on the who. It depends on, am I outnumbered? Because I'm not a little wimpish fellow. I mean, I'm 200 pounds myself, 5'11" tall. I also have really strong peripheral awareness. But I'll tell you what would be fearful for me is that they wouldn't know the content of my heart. And that would concern me. Mm-hmm. What would concern me is that I would be found guilty of what my forefathers did, that or what current racist-minded people are doing. And I have a short haircut. Does that mean I'm part of the Aryan nations? Of course it doesn't, but there might be assumptions made. Mm-hmm. And so I would be concerned about the presumption that would be made. And what's great, I'm off the hook often because we got a lot of 24 fans. We got a lot of 24 fans out in the world. And that gets my ass off the hook. We get a lot of Transformer fans. And so they're like, Jack Bauer, man, Jack Bauer. I love my Aaron. And so all of a sudden I get a hall pass most of the time, but not all the time. And I'll tell you when I didn't feel the presence of any kind of hall pass is because, oh, well, hello, Denise Lee. And so when I was in Chicago shooting a series about 2 years ago, and I didn't know how dangerous Chicago was. Mm-hmm. And I realized you got to be seriously careful about, I was warned by local. He said, don't just think you can get up here and jump on any train. Don't think that, because there are trains. Look at me. And I looked, and he said, there are trains you don't want to be on. Mm-hmm. It would not be good for you to be on that train. So I try to just be smart in general and follow advice of the locals and try to be in areas where things are pretty safe and not run the risk of putting myself in a place where someone might also be judging me for the color of my skin and have me try to basically answer to someone else's karma. And this is part of what I wanted to discuss tonight, is that we had an incident, and I realize that it's not isolated. Racism is certainly not isolated. We had an incident this week, but there's rarely a week that goes by that there isn't something that is newsworthy. So this is the latest hot topic. And from that, I don't think anybody in the world, regardless of skin color, I don't think anybody should ever have to answer for someone else's karma, which is one of the reasons we got to be careful about who we associate with, because you can associate with someone who's got some serious bad juju, like just bad karma, and you do not want to be in their company. And that's not a skin color issue. I've known a lot of white people that I wouldn't hang around ever because they are bad karma, and bad people look for those people. And I don't want to be caught in the crossfire when such a thing happens. DB, let's hear your heart, man.
Yeah. Well,
love you guys. I'm so glad that we're doing this tonight.
So am I.
And you know, staying on that, I really enjoy the fact like everybody kind of talked about their experience, you know, with Black people, you know, because I think I'm not from Chicago. I'm from Michigan. I'm from right down the street. And like where I'm from, you got like a lot of kids that went to like suburban areas and they go through the police academy. And then they come and they put these dudes who never been in a fight before, who never been around this culture, to come live in it. And immediately they intimidated. They're afraid. And so what do? They try to pump fear into the community because, and generally, like, they're afraid of us. So they like trying to give it back. And I think that in this era, it's like a lot of people don't want to offend each other. And like, we so careful about what we say that like we never really get a chance to get to the core of how we truly feel. Because we can legislate a whole bunch of things, but we can't legislate like how we feel about one another. So how you gonna get to know, you know, I don't pose a threat is just by like getting to know me as a man or anybody and just giving that person a fair shot. And as you get, because it's not, we keep saying, you know, white versus Black, but it's not really like it's not all white versus Black. It's like most of the time it's like a culture difference, it's a cultural difference. And most people don't understand the culture. So when they're around it and they, you know, they feel us getting, you know, loud or doing whatever, they haven't been assimilated in that culture. So it makes them nervous, and then they start getting edgy. And then, you know, we're actors, and we know that if you don't feel enough as an actor, you always gonna push on your work. Like, so if you don't feel enough as a person, if you gotta play a certain type of role, you're gonna do too much to accommodate and be in that role. And it's the same thing, you know, when people come to our communities, it's like they don't feel enough that they're able to control us by just being cool. So they overstep the boundaries, and in return they get disrespect back, and then it just kind of keeps on fueling.
You're talking about overcompensating.
Yeah.
And we do see that all the time with actors. And I think the parallel you've just drawn is amazingly accurate.
I'm curious, DB, Nikki, years ago, Malcolm Gladwell wrote this book called The Tipping Point, and then tried to analyze why when something happens, it really gets a response more than what you might think it would. But it's been something is built and built and built, and then there's that final thing that tips it over. Right. And I'm wondering why, from your perspective, why has this been such a tipping point? Because I mean, we've seen it in Ferguson, we've seen it in New York, and it's so awful. But there's something about this one that created this tipping point where people are fighting.
Yeah,
tons of people are just saying, yeah, that's enough. You know, we're done. This is enough. Why now, and why this?
I think, you know, my grandfather, you know, he used to tell me that his grandfather wouldn't spank him all the time. But he said, when I finally do get you, I'm going to get you for old and new. So, you know, I think
that's a great point. Great.
I ain't going to get you this time, but when I finally do get you, I'm going to get you for old and new. And I think, like, you know, honestly, I haven't even watched the Floyd video. I haven't watched it. My heart, I've been dealing with this since 6th grade. You know, it's like one thing after. It seems like every year it's kind of like, all right, what he gonna go to trial? He gonna be found innocent, and then what? We're gonna do another peaceful protest. So, and I'm not saying anything's wrong with that, but I'm just saying, like, I don't really know what to do. And we've done the peaceful protests in the past, and what do we get? You know, it's a similar result. So now it's just like, I think just out of confusion, out of pain, out of hurt, out of everything that's happened, it's just kind of like we got to do something. And I'm not down with the looting. But I think that people just breaking property to prove a point will be different than us like going to seek revenge. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's kind of like we will stuff. But if we wanted revenge for everything, it'll really be bad. And you know, the first question was how I felt about everything over the weekend. It concerns me. Like I see what people are standing for, but it concerns me that like who's in office don't necessarily care about our health. And I just seen a girl like get hit with a rubber bullet, and it like went in her forehead, and like all of this was just messed up. And it was just like, I would hate to see anybody else get hurt from this, and then, you know, 2 years later the same thing happens. So it's like, I don't know a better way to go about it right now. Like, we all trying to figure that out, but just to let out some of this aggression, I think that's like, it's just like I said, I've been dealing with this since like 6th grade. So it's just kind of everything. And this just happens to be the time that we finally just releasing it.
Well, I think this one is different, and I feel it too, Scott. I felt like, wow, yeah, this one feel it just, and I think it's because the officer sat there with his knee on this man's neck.
Yeah.
With his hands in his pockets, so cavalier, so casual. And if you see the screenshots of their eyes, because I didn't watch the video, couldn't, just this sheer just evil in his eye. Just and
are you talking about in the officer's eye?
Yeah. Officer's eye.
Specifically the one with his knee.
With his knee, yes.
Yeah.
And then and George Floyd's, and you look at his eyes, and you can see that his eyes are almost coming out of his head. His eyes are bulging out. And this man called for his mom. A 46-year-old man called for his mama. And from what I've read, is that his mom passed 2 years ago. So I'm of the belief that he saw his mother come to get him.
Wow.
You think he was crossing over at that point that he said that?
That he said, mama. And I think that it was not only just that this week. If you recall, the lady Amy Cooper in Central Park wanted to call the police on a man for bird watching because he asked her to put her dog on a leash. And for her to pick up the phone and say, I'm calling 911 to tell them that an African-American man is threatening me. As a white woman, that is exhibiting so much privilege, because you know the relationship that African Americans have with the police in this world today. And for you to say that you're going to pick up the phone and call the police and say that you're being threatened by an African American man, the moment those police officers get there, they're coming with what? Guns drawn. There was that. There was George Floyd. There was Ahmaud Arbery, it was not police brutality, but the man that was chased because he was out jogging and was chased down by citizens and shot and killed. That was in February, and that news didn't start coming out until March and April. It's a lot. It's a lot. And we don't, we don't understand why.
Exactly.
Where's the hate? Why?
I'm trying to figure out, what did Black people do, you know, besides like help this country get rich? Like, everybody's eating off the labor, but I mean, like we don't even want revenge. We just want to be treated like a human being, man. I don't feel like that's too much to ask for, and that's the part that kind of just get me. We ain't asking for no privilege. We just asking to be just treated like a human being, and that hurt.
Black
Nikki,
people are
can
treated,
you comment?
I'm sorry.
Can you comment, honey, on something, and something you said in your Facebook Live the other day about white privilege? Can you say something about that? I thought it was very powerful.
You know, I often have heard people talk about white privilege, and I come from a suburban area, so I've been around. I was a minority in my high school, but I talk to people all the time about white privilege, and they're like, I am not privileged. I don't have any money. I worked for everything that I had. Nothing was ever given to me. I am not privileged. That is not what white privilege is. White privilege is simply being given the benefit of the doubt based on the color of your skin. That you will not hurt anybody, you will not harm anybody, you will not steal anything solely based on the color of your skin. That is white privilege. And I said that, I do have a semblance of privilege because I'm a woman, but I'm also a Black woman. So if I'm in Nordstrom's in Highland Park in Dallas, which is a very high-end area, I might be given a second or third look. I might be followed around the store. But someone who is white, who might be in that store to steal, they won't follow them. They will follow me.
Because you're the more likely in their view.
In their view. So they simply get that benefit of the doubt because of their skin. Somebody's driving in a nice neighborhood. A Black man in a Mercedes-Benz in a nice neighborhood will get pulled over and ask, "Is this your car?"
Yeah.
Nikki Sandy Archer just said, "Wow, thank you, Nikki, for that definition. I wondered what that meant." We have such a strong dialogue with our viewers, and I wanted to offer this thought, which is that I think you said, Scott, to answer your question when you said why this one. I think it's twofold. I think it's not just the incident. I think that's huge, and yes, the knee to the neck, without question. I also think it has been intensified because the nation itself, the world for that matter, has been stretched so thin with COVID-19. I think this is not to say it's because of that at all, but it's to say that in general, going into this incident, let's rewind a week ago before this happened. Our nation is already stretched thin, and there's not a big margin for error going on right now. People's patience is at an all-time low, in my view, what I'm seeing. And I'm not saying everybody. I know that some people are faring better than others, but overall, this is not a real patient time. It's not been an easy time. It's not been a happy time. And it has been nothing short of a desperate time for some. I'm not one, so please don't hear anything other, because even the saying that we're all in the same boat is nonsense. We might be in the same storm. We are not in the same boat. I'm not arrogant enough to say something like that, because during this storm, you have some people who are on a yacht cruising through the storm, and you have others who are fighting to cling to what's left of a lightly inflated raft and are going under fast. And then every imaginable scenario in between, without a doubt. But I just know in general, I haven't met anyone yet in the last 11 weeks who has said, I sure hope this COVID situation goes on for quite a while because I'm enjoying it. I haven't met that person. I think there's a word for it, and I think the word is moron, but I haven't met them. And no one has said, if we get lucky, it'll go on through Christmas, which will be awesome. I haven't seen that. And so people have already, by March, had already had enough. And so now from this place of what else is there, then this happened. And I think there's a collective, oh no, like just no. And so we're obviously, when we're at a breaking point already, it's, there's a susceptibility here of things becoming very extreme. And I agree that DB does look like he has something to say. I was just trying to answer about, Scott's question, and my thinking is COVID is not completely out of the picture in terms of the short-temperedness right now. I don't think people are really at their best. That's not to pardon the behavior, because the behavior is outlandish.
I want to follow up on that too, but first I want to hear what DB has to say as well. So.
I'm good, man. I'm taking it all in. I'm taking it all in.
We got people chiming in from the stands that are saying, DB wants in, coach. He wants in. He's wanting to say something. Get him on the playing field.
No, I guess if I had to say something, man, to everybody out there right now, man, is that I love you. And I truly do mean that from the bottom of my heart. I love it. I know times is hard, but tough times don't last, but good people do. So that'd be what I had to say.
So is talking intelligently like this not an option? typically, and so is the sense that maybe it doesn't ever move to resolution if we approach it in a kind or thoughtful or civil manner. Is it desperate times call for desperate measures? Is that what we're looking at, that it has to be more extreme in order to get people's attention?
I think Nikki really hit the nail on the head too with what you mentioned about just the look on the face, because I think because of what we've been talking about, we're many white people, every time they've dealt with an officer, it has been a respectful situation, and they just and they've made excuses in their head in the past. Well, maybe he had a gun, or maybe the officer thought that, and they try to rationalize that. You can't rationalize this one. There's no way that a reasonable human being didn't see exactly what you saw, Nikki, exactly what you said. I thought that was so spot on.
But they try to. I believe I have seen on Facebook, people have said, I want to see what happened before the video started rolling. I'm sorry. What?
Excuse
and
me?
let me, so I, so
Yeah.
here's my problem too. I mean, I think it's police brutality as a whole, because I do know that there are some police officers who have just this ego driven, and there are good officers out there. I know plenty. So I will not even begin to say there are no good police officers. There are great police officers. And thank you for your service if you're listening and you're out there. But there are horrible, horrible police officers. And the good ones, however, don't speak up whenever they see the bad behavior. There's that. But then there's also the fact that oftentimes police officers, they treat Black people like they're that we're just a huge danger. Dylan Roof killed 9 people in a church and was apprehended without incident and taken to Burger King. George Floyd, they said, allegedly wrote a forged check, and he died.
For cigarettes, wasn't it?
No, cigarettes was Eric Garner.
Wow.
He was cigarettes.
They thought he passed a counterfeit 20, and
that's okay. I thought it was a check or a
bill. They said a counterfeit bill.
You've been given change. You might not even know. It's there's nothing. There's
a University of Connecticut student who was accused or allegedly killed 2 people, and this is this week. Allegedly killed 2 people and was on the lam for 6 days, was apprehended. They saw pictures of him sitting next to a police car, and the police officer gave him some water. George Floyd asked for some water. He had for 10 minutes, this man sat with his knee on his neck.
And he was already handcuffed.
And 4 officers, 1 man, knee in the neck.
And I hate the fact that every time somebody dies like this, they bring up some stuff he did. I think with Trayvon Martin, they brought up, like, he smoked weed a week ago. Like, what does that have anything to do? Like, I hope if something ever, happened to one of my family members or something, they don't bring up, oh, he stole a pack of gum last week, just to kind of like take away his humanity and somewhat justify why these things are going on. It seems like every time they always bring up something in the past to just justify it, like, oh, well, he was this. It was a pothead.
You could see the hatred in that cop's eyes. You could literally see evil and hatred coming out of his eyes. And cavalier is probably too good of a word, but he just had a smug look on his face and his hands in his pockets, and it's unbelievable. And to see some of the crap going on social media, the comments, and I look at it and I sit there, and I ain't Black, and I get so angry and pissed off that it makes me want to like, oh, I'll keep it. But you know, like, what is the answer? What's the solution? Is it we got, because I have a lot of black friends, a lot, and I mean a lot that are like brothers and sisters to me. And I matter of fact, I talked to one of my friends that day, and I said, dude, did you see that shit? Pardon my language. Are we?
That's all right. Nikki already broke the violation code earlier.
Oh.
Yeah, she broke it about 45 minutes ago, so you're good to go.
My bad.
So did you see that? Did you see?
It's okay. The one amongst us who was the least likely to do it is the one that did it.
I know.
It's pretty funny.
Sorry.
Go
But
ahead, Ken. So
and he, you know, he said, and I said, you know, I said, I watched that and I think that could have been you, bro. That could have been you. That could have been. And Nikki, you watch it. DB, you said you haven't, but like, it's heartbreaking because that it's got to stop.
Mhm.
And I don't, and I listen. I don't think that looting and breaking in and stealing other people's shit is the answer. That is not the answer.
I
That-
agree.
Definitely not the answer.
I agree.
Setting buildings on fire is not the answer. That's not the answer. I'm not saying I have the answer. If you know, I go back to what somebody told me long ago, and Dr. Wayne Dyer talked about it in everything he did, and that was, whatever the problem is, the answer is God.
Yes, I can agree with that, because I am a believer,
Nikki's
and
a
I
member
believe
of
that
that
as well.
club.
Yes, I
is
absolutely believe
DB.
that. But my question then is, and you said it, you don't have the answer. I will preface this by saying I also don't believe in the looting and the rioting. I think there is definitely a way to do things. However, I have seen a lot of my Facebook friends who have posted about the looting and the rioting, but never said one word about the reason that people are looting and rioting. And I feel that that's a problem, because you are valuing property over a person. And if they're breaking into people's places, and they're taking things, and it's wrong. But if they're a good business owner, guess what? They're insured. And being that we're in the middle of this COVID-19 situation, they were probably closed down anyway. They got broken into, and now they're going to be able to file insurance, and their business is probably going to thrive after this is all over over with and done. Again, not saying it's right, but you can go and file an insurance claim and get that back up and running. You can't file an insurance claim and get this man's life back, or anybody's life back. So I understand that. I don't agree with the looting and rioting, but we also tried the peaceful protest thing with Colin Kaepernick kneeling, and that was a problem. So what?
Let me ask you this, and this is not exclusive to you, DB, or Nikki. It's the whole group. I'm asking, what is, and I have my own ideas, but I want to ask you guys, what is the logic? And maybe it's not logical, but what is the idea behind it? What is the incentive? What is the motive? What is to go out and destroy like this? It is done in the hopes that, or is it simply retaliatory and there are no in the hopes that? In other words, is it the desire to be heard? And if so, what are we to hear? I'm just asking, what is the point, or is there a point, or is it simply just acting out?
If you're looting, you're an opportunist, in my opinion. I mean,
okay.
Honestly, because I mean, you're going and you're taking that. I mean, really, what is that? What good is that? What purpose does it serve? I agree. I think the smashing stuff is just anger. I think you just don't, there's no other way to relate, because I'm shaking right now.
Right.
Like, I'm literally shaking, and I don't have an outlet. And if that's somebody's outlet, they will break something. They will just, that's just that anger being released. Again, not saying it's right, but that I believe is where some of that is coming from. But I think I saw something pop up that says let's differentiate between the protesters and the looters and the rioters. And I agree. I agree. There are people that are out there that are really protesting in the name of George Floyd and all other people who have died at the hands of the police, or, you know, based off of their race. And the others, in my opinion, are just opportunists and awful human beings.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Ken. Now
I have a really, really good black friend that he posted something about, and he's like making fun of the looters a lot. And he's saying, have you ever been so mad about something that you thought, I need to go bust into this place and get me a new flat screen TV? You know, I think that if Nikki and DB and me and Glenn and Scott and we're all out and we're like, okay, we're going to march in this peaceful protest, I don't think any of us would go, would you look at that? Target's open over there from the windows. Let me go over there and give me some new socks or something. It's not going to go.
Let's just start by saying you don't want anything from Target, just for starters. Okay. Free or not, it's too much. Even if it's free, it's too much.
But I'm just saying,
I'm joking.
Like that's got to be something that's, if you're going to go busting into some place and stealing, that's something that you're made of. That's not something like all of a sudden you're upset and you're out and you're protesting and you're like, oh, you know, I've never stolen a flat screen TV until now. I'm going to go get one. That's not going to happen unless you're made up of that.
I'm also reading that's people are being bussed in, and that's, you know, to change the narrative as well. That it's actually not people from that town that's doing that.
That's what I heard.
People coming in and actually just trying to change the narrative. DB, you have something to say, I can tell.
The conversation's so good, man. I think this is definitely the start, man. It's just people being honest with one another, and because, you know, I mean, most of us in this room is actors, and we know that people are people all through time. Well, a lot of people are just the same behavior. So, like, just to think like 100 years ago, somebody would get hung, and somebody could just walk right past it and go eat what they, you know, eat and be with their family. It's just kind of like, and I feel like after slavery was abolished, like nobody went to jail. It wasn't like we had a Hitler and he got punished. Like, it was just kind of like, all right, everybody free to go. And there was nothing to identify the villain except like the skin. So a lot of time, like, it'd be hard. Like, I'd be having to like check myself. Like, all right, D, we're gonna meet everybody with neutrality, with love, and we're gonna give everybody a fair shot. But it's just I don't really know. Malcolm X had a quote where he said, if somebody speaks Spanish, you talk to them in Spanish. You know, if somebody speaks English, you speak to them in English. And he was just saying, like, I'm not here to promote violence. I'm just saying that if the only language that you hear is aggression, then let me go ahead and speak that back to you, because maybe you'll understand me then. So I'm not saying that that's my logic, but maybe that's a part of it. You know, my little brother was actually at the protest yesterday, and you know, like I said, just like mixed reviews, because I'm like concerned for his health. I'm like, I don't want anything bad to happen to him, but I understand like he's fighting for the cause. But I don't know. I don't really got the answers to this one right here. You know?
DB, did you see Jeff Elam's comment? Can you bring that back up?
That was
So
great.
Jeff, you got to understand, Jeff ran the extra mile west whenever I wasn't in Los Angeles running the class. He says you have a resting I want to say something face.
I think it's the eyes, man. I got the movie light in the hair, man. I'm always thinking, but nah, it's a good combo. And honestly, I kind of had mixed feelings. I really didn't know how to feel about it. I'm like, man, should I be there? Should I not? Should I? So
where here on the show?
No. I was thinking about like, dang, should I be out there on protesting? You know, but you know, somebody just told me like putting yourself in harm's way ain't the way. So you know, one of my homies is in Michigan, is working on putting together like a basketball game where police officers, you know, hoop and play against the other kids in the area, because he feels like if you know the kid And if you know somebody personally and they're not just like a stereotype to you, then maybe you'll be a little bit more lenient, you know, with how you deal with them. But I really don't got the answer to this one. I'm just here to, you know, express how I feel, I guess, in a sense.
Scott, I think you said something earlier that is worth repeating and worth illuminating a bit, is that you said that you were a minority in a, I guess you went to school and you were and you were a minority.
It was in Texas, in fact.
Oh.
I spent a week in the school doing an experience program in Texas. So I went to the classes and went to the school for a week.
Yes, and I think there needs to be more of that.
Absolutely.
I think if there is any way that type of thing can happen, I think that would allow people to live a day somewhat in someone else's shoes. My husband did a similar program. He is from South Dallas, went to Lincoln High School, and went to St. Mark's, which is a school in an all-boys school over in the Dallas area, and the same thing. And it allows you to actually get to know someone at their core level. And I think it takes away some of the fear that might be there of not knowing. Because Ken, you said you didn't see a Black person until you were 14 years old. I can only imagine how, I won't say scary, but just, I mean, it could be like scary and exciting and everything, like you just the unknown. To be able to place someone in that type of situation earlier, I think would help exponentially. So I wonder if there's some sort of programs that can be started or vamped back up.
To your point, Nikki, I think isn't it interesting that for many years we've had exchange programs with other countries?
Mm-hmm.
You know, yeah. we send high school and college students to study abroad to understand other cultures, but yet they don't even understand all of our own cultures here in this country.
Yeah,
I think we would be much better off sending, you know, a guy like I was when I was a kid. I would have been enriched so much more spending more time in that predominantly Black school than I would have been to go to France or to Germany. I mean, it would have been so much more. I've heard it said, and I don't know who is the originator of this quote, but that the opposite of love is not hate.
Fear.
Love is indifference.
Oh, indifference. Okay.
And so when you see some of these people, whether they are these idiots on social media or even police officers, I mean, that's part of what I saw in that officer's eyes as well. It was just an indifference to that man's life, just a total indifference. And to me, there's a part of that that's even worse than hate. I mean, when that person is not even, if I have hatred towards somebody, at least I acknowledge who they are. I mean, it's not well-founded. It's not good. I'm not trying to excuse that. Don't get me wrong. But indifference is real. When they're not even human, is that's when it's most dangerous and most.
Yeah.
I used to work in Louisville television years ago, and there's this video that's out now of this officer in Louisville who takes his gun and shoots a rubber bullet at a journalist. And it's a white gal, but she's on the air live and screams because she gets hit by this rubber. And you see this person's eyes, and there is just an indifference that to me is terrifying. And then somebody posts, well, you know, maybe he didn't know that they were, you know, brought. Really, I would think her microphone with a big flag on it that said Channel 3 and the cameraman and the lighting person might have clued him in that this
is often an indicator.
Yeah. I mean, we call this a clue.
Yes.
And that's what we can't tolerate in our culture, is this indifference to the plight of others, the indifference to the challenge of others, or the indifference to our own privilege. That's what we've got to get beyond. We've got to get beyond.
Can I ask you an honest question, man? How did you, feel or think about, really the whole panel, how do you think that you guys felt before you actually really got a chance to be immersed in culture? How did you feel about it? Because I mean, I know all we got is movies and things like that. And I think that we be so portrayed as villains and hoodlums, and that it's probably hard for you to know anything different unless you know somebody personally from that culture. So just what do you think white America perceives Black people that haven't been immersed in the culture at all?
Ken, you want to answer first?
I thought he was asking Scott.
Oh, I think he's asking all of us.
Oh, you guys go first. I went first the last time.
You know, DB, I guess I feel very lucky because I don't feel like my view was altered nor tainted by show business, because show business for me is the business I've been in for 50 years. So it's always been something I recognize to be pretend. So I don't have the same slant on it that I think most people do. And I really don't feel under the influence of having been pummeled with images and stereotypes and so forth by the media and or by film and television. But I also know I'm really an exception in that regard. I've always been able to meet and assess upon sight when I see someone and feel their energy and get to know them and hear them and have a sense of who it is they are. And everything is on a case-by-case basis. You know, Dr. Phil McGraw gave us something. One of the more intelligent things he said ever is when he said, you know, and he's a good old boy, he's from Texas. He said, I was taught, I was raised to give people the benefit of the doubt. And he said, that's gotten me into a lot of trouble. And I want to say something more about that because I thought it was quite profound. I was raised to do the same thing, to give people the benefit of the doubt. And it turns out the healthier approach, and the one that will keep you out of far less trouble, is to simply approach all people with from the position of neutrality, the modality of neutrality. In other words, the benefit of the doubt based on what? They haven't earned it. This isn't an issue of skin color. It's a matter of a human being. You have to greet them from neutrality and observe what's their story and allow an account to form, what we call relationship capital, from which there will be deposits, there will be withdrawals taken and so forth. But he said that his life changed for the better when he stopped automatically giving everybody the benefit of the doubt, because it turned out that many did that kindness. They really treated it very poorly, having been given the benefit of the doubt. And here was, in summation, here's what he said, and I think it's brilliant. And what he said was, make people earn you. Make them earn you. And not in a ridiculous way. Don't make them qualify for years, but make them at least qualify, because all of our time and all of who we are, we're all precious. We're all unrepeatable creatures in the eyes of God, in my view. And I have such a blessed sense of equality in that way. But our time is the one thing we don't ever get back. And so I don't think you want to just waste your time, especially large quantities of it, with just anybody, because they may not be there on the same page of love and respect and kindness and decency and fairness and equality that you are. And this winds up being a bad investment. I've said it often. It's like trading Boardwalk for Baltic in Monopoly. It's a terrible trade. So just being kind goes a long way. And there are a couple of things that have been posted earlier. Catherine made a comment about any thoughts about police reform and addressing where the system isn't working. I also can't help but wonder, why didn't, when everyone saw how extreme it was, Nikki, and I'm aiming this toward you because you mentioned the look in his eye and the look in the officer's eye and everything. Why was everyone mired in inaction when it was that extreme, when it was clear that somebody was getting ready to die, and it's now happening? They're dying. Mm-hmm. Why wasn't that an extreme enough situation to result in the crowd even overtaking and knocking him off this man? Or was it based on fear that they themselves would be shot by a fellow officer?
I believe so.
I'm only asking. I don't have an opinion about it. I'm just curious.
You had 4 cops with guns.
Yeah.
Right. I get it.
I watch these 2 guys say, you know, these two humongous black dudes that I was just looking for it actually on my phone. Somebody sent me, and these dudes were like, I won't talk how they were, but like they were like, I would have tackled that. I would have like, he's like, I'm an American. I would have tackled. He's like, but you know, we are like 6'5", 280 pounds. They're twins. And you know, so I think, look, back to DB's question though, like, you know, and Glenn, were you done with that? I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
No, baby. Listen, I'm good. And I actually want to recommend that we go a little over tonight. I'm down with that for sure. I think that this is a necessary conversation and I don't want to rush it. So no, I was complete with that.
You know, I'm sitting here and I'm thinking about, because I was raised in, again, did not meet first black person until I was, I don't know, 14 or 15 maybe. And then I went to work at the Honda factory building cars right out of high school and was immersed in, there were multiple cultures going on there and races. And I remember, I'm sitting here thinking, and I'm trying to keep up with comments too. So if I seem a little bit off, I'm trying to keep up with what comments.
Hey, Ken, let me just interject this. You've seemed off since the day we started this show. Just to be real clear, there's no
admire your consistency. You know, there you go.
Off, man.
Do you see what he does, DB? Whenever I call him out, he just removes me from the show.
Oh, that's just wrong.
Mute.
Yeah. So, but, you know, I was working side by side 8-10 hours a day with this dude named Lewis. Lewis was whiter than me. I mean, whiter than me. But I mean, he was jive talking all the time. And I was like, finally, this went on for weeks and weeks and weeks, the way he talked. And I was like, can I ask you a question, Lewis? And again, remember, I was not raised around any black people ever my whole life. And he said, sure, what's up, man? And we were good friends at this point. I said, man, why do you talk like you're black, dude? And he goes, 'cause I am, you fool. And I said,
you ask a black guy why he sounds like he's black?
Because I am. And I said, well,
oh my God,
dude, you're whiter than I am. What are you talking about? And he says, I got a recessive gene. And I said, well, I don't even know what that means. And it's some kind, it's like an albino.
Oh, so he's an albino. He was an albino.
And it blew my mind. And he became one of my best friends in the world, educated me beyond, really educated me. I knew nothing about the African-American culture.
Did he ask you why you sound like Ward Cleaver?
Yeah. No.
Did you tell him you had a gene?
I was 19 years old, man.
Okay, then you're forgiven.
I was young, but I just didn't know. I didn't know. And I think that the answer is something that Nikki and DB have both touched on. You gotta get out of the ignorance. And for years, everybody's like, oh, it's just ignorance. Yes, it is. You take a white baby and a black baby and you put them together, or a 1-year-old and a 1-year-old, or a 2-year-old and a 2-year-old. There ain't no racism going on there. There's no racism between those little babies. None. Zero. It's a learned behavior.
Yeah.
It is a learned behavior. And so when you say, I'm going to bust out of this. I'm going to be friends with people that aren't exactly like me and learn more about, we got to learn more about each other. That's my opinion.
We do. And something you said, and it's absolutely not offensive, but it can be offensive.
But
is you saw this guy who was fair skinned and you said, why do you sound black? What does black sound like?
Right.
What does white sound like? Because I've heard that often.
I know.
You sound like a white girl. I'm sorry, what? Because I speak the King's English? I mean, what are you doing?
It's not color.
And it's not. It is culture, right? And so I think that, we have to get out of, I think, saying you sound this way or you sound that way, or can you be more this way? Like in the entertainment industry, I'll hear oftentimes, can you be more Black?
Oh, wow.
As a note from a director.
Yeah. Can I be more Black? So what you want me to do is you want me to start rolling my neck, and you want me to be the stereotype. This is what you want from me. Oh, I can do it. And I can go there, and you probably won't like it if I really am doing it. But why is that what you think Black is?
And my guess is it's not a Black director saying that. Just a wild guess on my part.
And Scott, this is why you are the genius we know you to be.
Yeah,
you can figure that out like that.
I don't know, man. I feel Nikki on that too. I mean, I feel like I'm kind of in the middle, but as far as me and my friends used to always ask if a white family from Africa comes over here and has a kid, is the baby considered an African American? Like what is that?
They are.
Right.
Yeah, are they considered African? But we see it, and I just think sometimes with American culture, it's a lot of arrogance. Like I got friends that go over to China on trips, and they talk to them in their homeland like they foreigners. I'm like, bro, what a respect. But it's like we think that this is it, or America's it. And Nikki talked about the white privilege, man. It's just I have friends that are Caucasian. I guess they talk more Black than me, but that's not because that they're trying. It's just that they were immersed in a culture at a very young age. And so it's kind of like if you put a Black baby or a white baby in a Spanish home, they're going to grow up speaking Spanish. But it's why do we always got to wear the label of that's Black or that's that because it's ghetto or it's hood? But it's just, I don't know. It's just a culture thing. And it's kind of, upsetting that everybody feels like that. And I might lose some fans after this. But we had a conversation about this, and we was just he said that every race feels like every race looks like everybody. So he was like, Black people think all white people look the same. White people think all Black people look the same. all Asian people look the same. And we just assume that they all have the same backstory and grew up the same without realizing that that's an individual with their own story, with their own path. And we don't get a chance to even dive into that. We just go, she just like this and she grew up like this and this is how she is. Without even, even getting to talk to somebody and getting to know them. And that's the part that it kind of gets me, because it's kind of people feel like they know me before they meet me. And it's kind of bro, you don't, you know what I mean? So.
And I don't know that as a nation, we're great at I don't know that we're great at seeing individuals. And I'm not going to include myself in that group because I'm really not a part of that. But as a people, I think that there is a large sector that is keen on labeling, and that they want to label as quickly as possible. Oh, I know what that is. I know what I can identify that. And then two things occur. One is a label gets placed on it, and then judgment follows relative to whatever label has been placed on it. And that's when we get into trouble. I want to say something that is not, I'm going to preface it by saying this is not a political statement at all. This is a color statement. This is about color of skin and what I consider to be evolution on our part as a nation. And I just want to mention what the feelings were in my heart. And I shared this with DB today on the phone. The day Barack Obama, again, this has nothing to do with an affiliation with a political party. I'm talking about the man's skin color. When Barack Obama, solely because he was Black, was elected, I was proud of our country. And I remember it. I've never been so happy. And I cried on the day of his inauguration only because I was comparing it to the freeze frames of images I had from when I was 9. And basically, we had gone from the South Pole to the North Pole of openness, or so it seemed. And so it is very difficult for me now to sit here and think that we are 11 years later, and I'm going to say it for the third time, This isn't about politics. This is about our personal evolution as human beings. I personally never believed that we would live to see a black president of the United States of America, whether they be Republican or Democrat. And when that happened, I thought, good for us. And the us was the nation. Good for us that we've apparently come so far that we can see who we, at least the majority, feel is the best man for the job, not the party, the man. And here we are 11 years later, and it's almost as though that didn't occur. And I know it did. I know it did occur, but it seems like this should have been the period, and forgive me for using the should have, because I don't want to should on anybody, but in the timeline of evolution, it seems that what's going on now would better fit in my thinking if it were 11 years in front of that day, not 11 years after that day. Am I making any sense? Does this make sense to you guys? We were so hopeful, Scott. Carol and I were so hopeful. We were in Salt Lake City and Park City at the Sundance Film Festival the day of his inauguration in January, and we were elated that, wow, we have moved into openness in a most impressive way, and now I'm feeling like we're taking steps backward as a nation, and it just hurts. It hurts to see it.
I also think, Glenn, and you're too modest, I know, to say this, but I think the television show that you were on played a part in that, because for people who might have not been able to picture a black person as president, the role of David Palmer in 24 that reached people throughout the middle of this country, throughout all parts of this country, and gave a role model of what that would be. I think, and that's one of the things that entertainment can do, is can create these roles. You know,
yes,
where I grew up in Indiana with no black families in our area, my mom's favorite television show was about a doctor in New York City who was black. It's the Cosby Show. Now, Cosby is not the role model that we want to bring up necessarily, but in terms of
the impactfulness of the show you're referring to.
In other words, what she saw was a family that she could relate to. Mm-hmm. The fact they were black didn't matter, because it mattered. But you know what I'm saying is that what they saw as parents trying to be good parents and raise their kids that's where skin color didn't matter. That's where, the fact that he lived in Manhattan and we lived on a farm didn't matter, because those things were the same. And that's such an important role, I think, of entertainment is to be able to help, not maybe educate's the wrong word, but to illuminate, at least.
Yes. And to even put something out there is something to sample, for example, in consciousness, to sample this. And not only are you spot on, but rest assured, this is not my first encounter with this assessment, Scott. I have listened to this since we were on the air, all the way back in 2001. And Barack Obama specifically, did I ever tell you this, that he called our show?
Oh, no, I didn't know that.
He called the show to thank us, and specifically took time to speak with specific people, and specifically Dennis Haysbert, who played David Palmer. He asked to speak with him, and he thanked us for this. He said, thank you for putting that possibility into the consciousness of the American voter. And it did. Not I think it did. It did, were his words. It did sway them in the direction that I think allowed me to win the election, because whatever the margin was, those were the viewers who fell in love. Look, I'll tell you, during the time of the show, Dennis Haysbert could have been elected president. Mm-hmm. He was that popular. And so this is what I meant about creating a sampling where even the racists of America were looking at, like, that old 24, that's a good show, man. I like that David Palmer guy. I'm kind of surprised how much I like him. And it was because he was knocking on the door of their racism by being someone who was lovable, by being someone who was intelligent, by being someone who was outspoken, by someone that you would look up to. And so it was like, just maybe. And then Barack Obama comes along, and they weren't entirely dissimilar. And so I do believe that in many ways our show paved the road for that level of open-mindedness that it took for that to occur. But again, so you're 100% right on. And he did take the time to get Dennis on the phone and say, thank you, Dennis, for your role in me being elected president of the United States. And that's when you start realizing that being an actor in a position like the one we were in on that show is not something that should ever be taken for granted, and that should be fully appreciated as to how strong your voice can be and how much you can affect behavior throughout the world. It was beautiful. So you're right on the money with that, brother. Right
hey,
on.
Glenn, I got Allstate to this day, baby. I ain't switching up.
Did Dennis make you buy Allstate insurance?
I want to make sure we do not forget, because Glenn, when you were kind enough to have me, talk with your class, I got to hear DB do an impression.
Oh, you was there? Okay.
Yeah, I got to hear that, and I want to make certain that before we get out of here, that
well, you got to give him a premise. You got to give him a premise. So in improv, we say give him a.
I say one thing before we go into that, because I feel like we're getting ready to wrap up, and I want to say one thing. I think that people are fearful of asking questions, period. If I don't know about your culture, DB, if I don't know about your culture, Nikki, and I was raised in a racist environment, or I was raised, and it can be reverse too. It can be reverse, right? So it can go both ways. But if I was, then it's on me to have I'll say the guts to ask.
Hey, Ken, can I say this too?
Yeah.
Associate, don't assimilate.
Right.
Like a lot of times people, get around, like you meet Caucasian, and they so like walking on eggshells to show that they not racist.
Yeah.
It kind of a little awkward. It's just like you don't have to assimilate, or you feel like they gotta talk like me, like, yo, what's up? Like, bro, you have to assimilate my culture, but we can still associate. And when I'm around, Caucasians, I'm not like, hey, how are you today, sir? Like, I'm just
Hey, do that one more time. Do it one more time. Do me a favor. Welcome me to Dairy Queen.
You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just like I'm myself, and I look at you as a man, and you look at me as a man, and you look at her as a woman, and you look at her as a woman, and you just be who you are, and I'm gonna be who I am, and then we can meet somewhere in the middle. But if you being dishonest and I'm being dishonest about I am, at the end of the day, we're gonna have a fake relationship, and then when we go back home, we go back to feeling how we was feeling in the first place, And that's the one thing, I commend Glenn for, is like, he definitely created a space where everybody can just, well, for me, I could be myself and talk to Glenn, and we be chopping it up and having a good time. And he never feels like he has to be like me, and I don't feel like I have to be like him, but we can just, because we both just being present with one another,
Love that, man.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
Nikki.
I did want to say, kind of to piggyback off what you said, Glenn, about the election of President Obama,
Yes.
and not to make it political. I
It
felt the
was
same
about his skin color. It wasn't about the political affiliation.
No, I
at all.
agree. No, and I felt the same way as far as, oh, look how far we've come. But in the same breath, I think as many people that were happy, there were just as many people that were not. And I think that honestly is when that turn happened, as far as when some of the more overt racism started to present itself again, is when he became the president. Because kind of like DB said earlier, I think at that point it was a shock that a Black man could become the president. And I think some people became afraid that that would create an uprising and that Black people would start to seek revenge. And I think what he said, earlier is that I think there became a fear that white people will now become the minority, and that, the other races would, create this uprising and take over.
So almost like they're taking over the
our
world.
country.
Gotcha.
And can I just say that bothers me as well, as when people say, well, if you don't like America, then go back where you came from. I'm from East Texas, so that's where I came from. So I'm not going back to Tyler. I didn't like it, so I'm not going back. Because I've never been to Africa.
By the way, the one and only sponsor we have from the show is from Tyler. So take it easy, would you? Take it easy. You know what it is? It's Big O Tires, Big O Tire Company from Tyler, Texas.
From Tyler, Texas. So, I think we're all here. If you were born here, this is your country. So to say go back to wherever you came from, we're all immigrants. If you want to be honest, the only people who can say go back to where you came from are the Native Americans. So I think we just have to overall respect one another. Know that we all want the same thing, which is to be loved, to love, to be happy, to try to prosper as much as we can. And unfortunately, some people can't do that because of the circumstances in which they live. But I think ultimately that's what we all want. And we all just want respect and to be treated equally.
See, I agree with you with a comma. Agreement with a comma. I wholeheartedly agree that that's what we all want. However, the level at which that desire exists changes dramatically from one to another. In other words, some people are wearing that desire right on their sleeve. That would be me. That would be you. That would be these gentlemen, all three of them. For others, you have to go on an archaeological dig to get to that place. You know what I mean? So I think in this beautiful place called Deep Down, I do agree with you. That deep down, we have that commonality. And then as we move toward the outer crust, which is where layers and layers of resentment and pain and judgment and so forth have sort of stacked upon that beautiful original condition, which is why Ken referenced the babies. And he said there's no racism there at all. I couldn't agree more, because those babies haven't formed any crust yet. They're still in their truth. They're just in their divinity. They're in their truth. They're in their bliss. They're in their openness. They're in love, in the spirit of love. And then as one download, one unfair download has been placed upon an unsuspecting, undeserving child, that child did not deserve to be mistreated, then they bought into whatever an adult handed them because they were taught the adults know best, which there's no truth to at all. Nobody is just wiser solely because they're an adult. We get to be wiser because we pay attention and we make good decisions. But a lot of people had really bad messages downloaded to them, and they're not starting from scratch. When they head out into the day, they got a whole lot of crust around their truth and around their light and around their love. And so I see my job in the world as to be able to be a crust breaker. And I've always felt that way, that my job is to help break through the hardenedness of another human being to make absolute contact with their soul, because I have found that, to your point, we are identical in that place called deep down. So when I meet someone, I'm after their deep down. I don't really care 2 cents about getting to know their crust, because their crust is BS anyway. I want to get to where their truth resides.
Amen.
Amen. Amen.
There's a Jim Rohn story. We've talked about Jim Rohn here before, and there's a Jim Rohn story about there's two ways for you to have the tallest building in town. And one way is to build the tallest building and be thought of as a builder. And the other way is to tear down everybody's building but your own. And you'll be known as a destroyer.
Wow.
And I think what we have to do is...
Did you say you'll be known as a destroyer?
Be known as a destroyer.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
And we've got too many people that think the way that they build themselves up is to tear down everyone else.
Man, that gets a big wow.
Hey, there's my mom. Hey, Mom.
Yes. Look at the inside, not the outside.
Give me some air knuckle on that one, baby. Don't leave me hanging. Don't leave me out there.
Well, you got to go up with it to catch Scott, baby.
Let's be
You got to reach up.
Who you trying to get? Everybody?
Who you trying to get?
You've been in the game 46 years. You must know cop damn.
Oh,
man.
We can't do this anymore. We got to do that.
Wow. This has been and if I may, and I know DB's got something to say, but
well, he's still got a little Denzel to share with us.
Yeah.
if I may, I think this has been the best show that we have had, bar none, by far. And we need to have as not just Americans, as global citizens.
Yes.
We need to have open conversations. We need to drop the fear. We need to drop the what we think we know about another culture, another race. We need to start asking questions, getting to know each other, man. That's where love comes in. You don't just fall in love with somebody because they look a certain way. You fall in love with somebody because of what they got going on down in their heart. There are black people that I will never, ever run with.
Mm-hmm.
And there are white people that I will never, ever run with. And I think Glenn said something about that earlier. We need to know each other in our hearts and our souls. And that's where the true healing of the entire planet comes in. Not just America, but the planet.
Agree.
Indeed.
What's DB got to say? I know he's got something. He's got a
Nikki be having all the good answers. Everybody, good job, Nikki. And I'll be like, I'll say something.
So in improv, Scott and Ken, in improv, we give them a where. You just give them a where and a what. So give DB a where, give him a place where he is, and give him a what, like what's going on in that place. Yeah, go ahead. He calls me Uncle G.
Can I have a request? Look, man.
You're going to give yourself your own where?
We take requests.
I just have a request. I posted the video I sent you. I posted on Instagram. I got like 6,000 views.
Oh, you're talking about Denzel at Domino's?
Exactly. But
you want us to screen share it?
Can we please? Because I didn't get a lot of views on YouTube. So can you guys?
Yes, you certainly can. All you got to do is guide Ken through it, and he'll search it off the internet, and we'll play it right now.
Is it on YouTube?
Yeah.
Hold up. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so you're gonna type in Darion Brown, DARION, his search, and then it should be a really handsome black man with a lavender jacket.
I love that look, Nikki.
By the way, the first week in my course is on humility. The first, unfortunately, DB came in week 3.
Oh, wow!
I missed that one.
All right, hold on. Where is this?
Okay. Oh no. Go to the picture to me at the very top and hit my name at the very top. Yeah, click that.
Should I?
Okay, you gonna hit that?
Let's see it.
This one here?
Yeah, right there.
All right, you guys ready? Let me take this.
Make sure you share the audio, Ken. Did you?
I did.
Okay, good.
This one here, right?
Yep.
All right, here we go.
Yeah, okay. We love a little ice, man. You can't just eat their delivery. You missing out? You missing out, dog? It behooves you not to get around. Hey, bro, did you wear a mask when you took this pizza? Son, the pizza's already in the box. Why? Because they got the app? I watched you cinnamon rolls in the oven for 10 minutes and now I got them.
Look at that walk. I love the walk.
I'm delivering pizza. That's my job. That's your job.
Why did it cut off?
Oh, that was the video, man. It was short and sweet, man.
Oh, it's funny.
And you know what's funny? The last 10 seconds, I forgot the camera was on and I was picking out. And I looked up and I was like, I'm delivering pizza.
Now give us a little straight up sampling. So give DB, we got that one, but give him a where.
Wait a minute. Hold on. Wait a minute. I got another actress in this with me, and we're not going to invite Nikki to play along with
Well,
me.
sure we can.
To do what?
Sure we can. Come on with it. Okay, so Scott, can you give them a where?
Yeah, let's do a farm in Iowa.
Okay, you're on a farm in Iowa. And what is going on, Ken? Just give them a what, don't give them details.
Well, there's
Make it simple.
there's hay laying out in the field and a huge storm coming up, and you got to get out there and get it picked up and put in the barn
Okay, so you got to do something about the hay.
before the rain hits.
Okay,
All right. I'm going to walk into the shop. All right. Whenever you call action,
Are you Denzel or are you just
no,
DB?
he's Denzel.
He's Denzel.
I'm
Okay.
going to put just them on the screen and take us out. They will not be able to hear us, however.
Okay,
Here we go.
Oh no, looks like the storm is a brewing. Can you help me get this hay moving before this storm comes in?
So you, hey, you, look at me, huh? So you telling me you want me to pick up the hay? That's what you're telling me, huh?
I do. Yes, I need you to help me pick this hay up before this storm comes in.
All right. Okay. How you want it though? Huh? Where you want to put it at, huh? You want it in here? You want it there? Where you want it, huh?
In the barn. In the
Yeah.
barn.
The barn. So if I pick up the hay, you want me to take it in the barn, huh? Okay.
Yes.
Look nice. Look real nice. So listen, I'm gonna take the hay to the barn. And how about after this, me and you go to a little drive-in, you know, maybe see drive-in with Glenn Morshower, huh? How that sound, huh? Yeah,
I like
okay. Yeah, doing that, okay. All right. Okay. Boom.
Now,
I'll be back. Hey, you stay, hey. You stay right there. Don't move. Don't move. Okay? Don't lie to me. You can't lie to me. You can lie to yourself, but not to me. I'll be back with the hay, okay? Give me a little kiss before I go. Give me a little right here, huh? Right here in the cheeky cheek, huh? I don't feel any lips. Nikki. Boom.
oh my God.
I think Nikki froze.
Nikki's
I
frozen.
I think that DB was so convincing that it froze Nikki's video in its tracks.
Frozen.
Oh, she still froze. Like she for real.
Or she's been working on her stillness. You know, you remember this one? So here's me working on my stillness when all of a sudden in the middle of a sentence.
That's pretty good.
Except you can see the wire jiggling when I stop.
Nikki, you know what?
I really was like,
I think her laptop must have died.
I could hold it, man.
Hey man, that was brilliant, DB.
That was awesome.
That was fantastic, DB.
Thank you, man, for the play. Hey, thank you so much for having me on the show as well, too, man. Thank you.
Hey, it's a privilege. Now, I'm gonna make you a promise if I can keep it. If I can keep it, because I will keep it if I can. If they give me an extra ticket, because you know I got a film coming out with Denzel.
Yeah.
Okay. So we did a movie, and I get to I got to play with Denzel this past year, and it was a privilege. And the film got backed up till January 2021. We originally were scheduled to come out this fall, but so many things got backed up with COVID and so forth. But yeah, when they have the screening, if they give me an extra ticket, I'd like you to do it. And you know I'm going to set you up in front of him. You know I'm going to do that and just say you got to do it.
Man,
I want him to experience someone doing an impression of him live, Because I haven't seen a lot of
No, there's not a lot of Denzel.
impressions of Denzel. I haven't. Look at this. Patricia said, "Oh my God, sounds just like Denzel."
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Hey,
Thank
Nikki and DB, thank you.
Thank
Thank
you
you
for having
both.
us.
Thank you guys.
Thanks for coming on. And I hope for our listeners, our viewers, that we have said a handful of things tonight that may have been difference makers, or just a chance for you to open your hearts and take a deep breath, and maybe we can proceed a little better and a little higher and a little differently tomorrow. All we can do is do our part. And we love you guys, and we appreciate the support. And thank you for rolling with us as a show, because we do bob and weave and maneuver and according to what's going on. And that's the way the three of us like it. Instead of rigidly and steadfastly having a format that we stick to that is unmovable and unshaking, I don't think that that's good. I think it's a lot better to be current with what's going on. So thank you for rolling with us, guys. Thank you so much.
The
Thank
Ken
you.
and Glenn Show. Thank you.
With a guy named Scott. I think
I forgot your name. Hey, we gonna pay you.
these are the conversations that we need to have, and we need to, we need you who have the platform to start them. So thank you for that.
More where this came from.
Thank you.
You want to take us out, Ken?
Nikki and DB, don't hang up on us. We're gonna go out with our outro.
Okay.
Scott, take it away.
That concludes another program. We'll see you again next week at this time, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 o'clock Pacific, for another week and another edition of the Ken and Glenn Show with a guy named Scott.